Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to East Central Missouri and the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast, podcast number 147. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the evening of Friday, November the 8th, from the James Strong Studio in western St. Charles County. Yes, I said a Friday evening, which makes it a Friday night special. And we've got two guests in studio. It's the Mad Dog. You can tell by his big mouth that he's in studio. And Joe Shaper. She's going to go ahead and be the grace behind this threesome, I guess. the only person who's maybe a little bit together. How's that?
Well, it is the Friday night special, Strong, so right. We may have to make a break halfway through if we don't have a cocktail waitress.
Well, there's no cocktail waitress around.
Then we'll have to take a break.
but we it is Friday night, so Joe and I are drinking Deserono Amaretto. The Mad Dog is drinking Maker's Mark, the hot toddy you
Yes,
had.
It was a hot toddy, which is black tea, a shot of Maker's Mark, and a little bit of honey, maybe a half teaspoon. But
Maker's Mark is sweet enough without honey.
It is.
But the topic, speaking of these bourgeois drinks of the upper class, a while back, Joe had asked me about communism. You didn't ask me about communism, but you basically said, look, there are so many people who have a misconception about what communism is. We need to do a podcast to set the folks straight. And I thought that was a fantastic idea. So here we are. We're going to talk about communism, what it's all about, why, for some reason, millennials, for some reason, think that Che Guevara, Hugo Chavez, not John Lennon, but Vladimir Lenin, and who's the other guy I'm missing? Karl Marx, I said him, but they're just
all around good guys.
Yeah, they're all around good guys.
I think you're missing Fidel Castro.
Fidel Castro, he's one of them. He's one of them.
The ranting Latino.
That's right. Che Guevara, all the rest of them. They're heroes, and
they're despots.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to talk about. That communism. What is it? Why are people interested in it? The true definition of communism. I think communism can sometimes be a misunderstood word. And what I mean by that is sometimes people call you a name. If you do something stupid, why, you must be a communist. Like the word liberal. Liberal is not a leftist. A liberal is a person who looks at things in a different way and tends to do things maybe unconventionally. That's the true meaning of liberal. But now it means a leftist. A bureaucrat is not necessarily some big fat cat who's on the dole. A bureaucrat is a government employee who does the work of the people. But the connotation for many of these things
is negative.
It's changed.
So is that why you hung the picture of Mao on the wall behind you?
There's no picture of. I think there's only a picture of one individual in this room, and that's the king of late night talk radio, Art Bell. He graces my studio.
Oh, I thought that was a young Mao Zedong.
No, that's not young Mao Zedong. That's Art Bell. What's
I thought that was Pikachu.
No, the Pikachu are behind me. I have two Pikachu behind me. And the plural of Pikachu is Pikachu, by the way. It's not Pikachus. It's not Pikachai. It's Pikachu. So, yes, there are two of those. There's the Bigfoot poster behind us. There's the vampire poster behind us. There's all kinds of stuff in this room.
But no Mao.
No Mao at all. Well, Joe, you were the one who kind of suggested that we get this conversation going. Start us off with what you've seen and why you scratch your head.
Well, basically, the reason I scratch my head is most of the time people talk about communism in a political context, and in actualism, and in actuality, it's an economic system.
Mm-hmm.
Capitalism is an economic system. Socialism is an economic system. Communism is an economic system. The major difference between the three, at least that I see, is a capitalist system is an owner who hires people or an independent contractor who is basically working for the profit.
Mm-hmm.
A socialist system is a worker-owned company or enterprise in which the objective is to accomplish something, but it may only be to break even, to keep the bottom line black, but you're not out there to make a profit for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And communism is the system where it is run, where the economics and the means of production are run by the state, and the idea is to make money for the state. And I think a lot of the people who throw those terms around, especially on Facebook, don't even have the foggiest clue that it has very little to do with the way a state or a country is run politically. Because, you could have a capitalist dictatorship. You could have...
Sure you could.
You could have theoretically a democratic communistic system. And you've got... this is the reason that I thought this would be an interesting topic to discuss, because a lot of, especially with Bernie Sanders saying, yes, I am a socialist,
Mm-hmm.
and people having the idea of that, and they're saying, well, then I can't vote for him because he's a socialist, and they don't even know what a socialist is, except it's a big bad S word.
Yeah, it's different from communism, by the way. Socialism is different from communism, in my opinion. But enough with opinions. The Oxford Dictionary defines communism as a political theory derived from Karl Marx, advocating class war and leading to a society where all property is publicly owned, and each person works and is paid according to their abilities and needs. And if you think about it, with the exception of where they advocate confrontation between the classes, in theory, it's not a bad system. There is one place in the world that communism works fantastically, and that's in some branches of the Roman Catholic Church. Jesuits, some religious orders are communist because they all do what they want. They put their money in a big pot and they take what they need and leave the rest. There's one exception to that, though, or one caveat, I guess you should say. They all raise their hand and join voluntarily, and they leave if they want to, which you really can't do that if you're a government, a communist government. An example, Father Malachi Martin, who was a Jesuit and a prolific author, and he started writing so much that he started to bring in a lot of money. Suddenly, he didn't want to be a Jesuit anymore. Shocking. It was fine when he made no money, but when he was making $1 million, he thought, you know what?
He made the quick mental leap and became a capitalist.
I don't think we need to share this anymore. So he dropped out of the Jesuits, stayed a priest, but he kept the money. Got him a swanky New York apartment, and didn't want to be a communist anymore. Didn't want to be a Jesuit anymore.
The whole aspect, money is an inanimate object. It's not good, it's not bad, it's neutral.
Mm-hmm.
So in the example of the priest, if he makes that money and he uses it for good, it's a positive aspect. If he makes that money and uses it for evil, it's a negative aspect.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting comparison, but yeah, usually from what I've read and in examples that people, and you mentioned, Joe, Bernie Sanders as a socialist. He's not a true socialist because I think his net worth now is, what, $10 million?
I don't know if it's that much, but once upon a time...
let's cut it in half. Let's say it's $5 million.
It's a whole lot more than it was before he ran for president, that's for sure.
And if that's the case, then why doesn't he just share that with his staff or his followers or his cause?
Well, I thought it was funny is his comment when he was criticized for that. And his answer was, you want to make a lot of money? You write a book. It's not that easy. And he got blasted for that. It's kind of true, but you can't say I'm a good socialist and then, but I have more money than you, so it's good to be me, it's bad to be you.
And
He's actually written 2 or 3 books, not just the last one. But
Yeah.
the last one pointed toward the White House was the one that people bought to find out, who is this dude and what does he want to do to us?
Yeah, exactly. The funny thing about communists, and if you think of what's the biggest communist country in the world right now?
China.
It's China. Okay, China. I did some figuring or some investigative journalism, I guess I'd call it. But China, this country that everybody needs to work and be paid according to their ability and needs. China has 4.45 million millionaires. They have 285 billionaires in China. Millionaires and billionaires in a communist country.
How does that happen?
As they used to say on Sesame Street, one of these things is not like the other.
That's right.
If you're a billionaire, you can't be a communist, my friend.
No.
Jack Ma, who owns Alibaba, is worth $39.4 billion.
And how much of his estate is claimed by the state?
I don't know. It doesn't say that Jack Ma, his company, is worth that, and he gives it to the state. He says Jack Ma is personally worth almost $40 billion. So I mean, either you're a communist or you're not. Malachi Martin said, I'm not a communist anymore. Jack Ma says, I'm a good member of the communist state, but I also have $40 billion, and you're not getting it. It's mine. I earned it. I'm keeping it.
That's a capitalist.
I thought the deal with China, the big China, is they claim to be communist internally and capitalist externally, which is why they keep selling us all of this stuff that we buy.
Yeah. I think they speak out of both sides of their mouth. But it's funny, though, and if you say, well, China is a communist country and the United States is a capitalist country, and really both statements are false, because the United States, while it certainly is more capitalist than China, this country has a lot of oligarchs in it, whereas...
And a lot of social programs.
Absolutely. Case in point, if you look at where the money is in this country, the money's not in rural America. The money is in the big cities. The big cities are primarily Democratic, not Republican. Now, once upon a time, the old mantra was, well, Republicans are pro-business and the Democrats are pro-people, the pro-labor, the labor unions and the people, okay? But the power and the money nowadays is in the city, not in the rural areas. And the cities are primarily Democratic, not Republican. So that's interesting. It's almost like everything's becoming skewed. Agreed?
Yeah, I mean, they're and we see that on the political stage, especially in the last 2 or 3 election cycles. The Democrats are always the first ones to come out and say, we're for the people, and we're for the social programs, and we're for education, and we're for health care, and we're for everyone, a chicken in every pot. Well, if you go back through history, it shows that was initially it was, but it has flip-flopped and it has changed, because I think now you've seen what's happened in some of these democratic social experiments. It hasn't worked. They've taken the social program and tried to feed everyone and tried to house everyone and give them what everyone else has, and it's created a lazy person. It's created a person that doesn't strive for independence, that doesn't strive for purpose, or has no purpose. A man or a woman with no purpose is just existing.
Correct. The whole communism, socialism thing. You mentioned social programs. I mean, who can be against a social program? Who wouldn't want to give money to children, people who need money? Only a heartless despot would not want to give to someone in need. Okay, this country's always done that,
and still does.
And that's true. But one of the things I'll always say is, you see these people, well, these rich people need to pay their fair share. These rich people need to do this. Rich people, the top 1%.